So now that Trump is president and everyone's talking about downsizing the government, is there a possibility that Trump could go and basically replace the entire FBI with something like AI? And before you say that sounds insane, let me walk you through how the FBI currently works. In order for them to successfully pursue someone in court, the FBI needs to put together a team of 10, 15, 20, 50 people to go through a mountain of paperwork in order to get all of the facts of the case, to organize everything so that they can present it in court. And the question here is, what if that entire process could be replaced with AI? Because right now you have programs like Notebook LM where you can take a PDF, drag it into Notebook LM, and literally ask Notebook LM to give you a full rundown, a full summary of everything inside of that PDF. Why not do that with any court case that the FBI needs to pursue? And on top of that, all that would need to happen here is to have some high-level FBI agents who would go through making sure that Notebook LM, these AI applications, aren't hallucinating. There's always a second person double-checking all of these facts, but all of the grunt research is actually being done through AI. And this becomes a very interesting idea, especially when you turn the FBI's focus towards the federal government, towards what I think most of us would call the deep state. Because right now, let's say you are the FBI and you're organizing an investigation against YouTube. YouTube is a pretty new company. They've only been around for, 20 years or so. And as a result, all of their information, all of the data and records that they have on file have been inside of YouTube's servers. And as a result, you only really need to go to one place. You need to only get access to one database in order to pretty much have everything that you need against YouTube. But when you're talking about the federal government, this is an organization that's been around for over 200 years and has gone through a lot of different types of file keeping systems. And as little as, 20, 30 years ago, we're keeping all of their documents inside of file cabinets. And as a result, when the idea of taking the FBI or taking any sort of investigatory body of the government and pointing it at the government itself, not only is it a bit of a problem trying to motivate the agents inside of the federal government to essentially investigate their brethren, their colleagues, but it is also very problematic on a logistical level because so many documents exist in so many different places and not everything has been digitized. So it's not like going and investigating YouTube where all the data is in one database. You have to go to a million different places. You have to track down a million different articles, and then you have to reduce all of those articles into their main bits that are useful to your case. It's an extraordinarily difficult task to undertake, and that's a big reason why a lot of people can get away with a lot of things inside of the government, because they know how to obfuscate their trail so that they can continue doing shitty stuff because the government isn't all that organized. So what if Trump or Elon or anyone in the upcoming cabinet were to take something like Notebook LM and basically run it through every piece of documentation? So now, let's take this back to the idea of using Notebook LM and pairing that with the FBI to investigate the federal government. What if you paired those two things together, and instead of 50, 100, 1,000 FBI agents having to go through all of these different actual paper physical files, you just upload all of it to Notebook LM, ask it for certain questions regarding the information that it has processed, and ask for citations so that a second person, a higher up person inside of the FBI, could go and double check all of the claims that Notebook LM was making. All of a sudden, you are able to succinctly point out the problems in federal government, because instead of trying to motivate FBI agents to investigate their colleagues and to pray to God that they are efficient enough to do it and to know exactly where to go in the thousands of places where all of these documents actually lie, you're just relying on a single AI. That is the possibility of what could potentially happen. And I'm not necessarily saying that Trump is necessarily going to make this happen, but if he wanted to, all of the technology exists to allow for this type of thing to happen. So now, the question then arises, is this smart to do? You know what I mean? Is this the type of thing that we want to do and put out into the open? Is it a good idea for all of the government's secrets to be shown in front of not just the American public, but the world? I think ultimately we would probably all agree to a certain extent that the government does need to maintain a certain level of secrecy, not just against foreign adversaries, but with its own citizens, because none of us are really all that well trained to figure out and to properly assess what certain pieces of information mean. If we come across one thing that has no context around it, is just a really bad piece of information that makes our government look really, really bad, and we're missing the proper surrounding context, is it actually useful for American citizens who are not aware of that proper context, are not aware of how to properly assess that piece of information? Is it appropriate for them or us at large to be given access to that information? Does that make our government run better? And I think the answer to that is probably somewhere in the middle, right? Like, government does need to maintain a certain level of secrecy in order to function, in order to operate, in order to not unnecessarily make people panic. But the problem that we've run into is that our government is working with what feels like a high level of non-transparency, to the point that, you know, every 2 years or so, we end up hearing something that our federal government is doing that is just totally off the walls, bonkers, that just makes no sense and makes us look horrible, not only to other countries, but to ourselves. And we sit there thinking, being like, what the fuck? Like, our government needs more transparency. So I think there's probably a middle ground here to release more information to the public and to keep things somewhat transparent, while also making sure that the government can maintain a certain level of secrecy. Because I think if you just open the floodgates here and just let everyone have access to everything, which Trump technically could do, like he has the ability to declassify any document that he so pleases. And let's say he were to do that with everything, and everything was available for us to put into Notebook LM to ask any question we wanted about it. And Notebook LM would indeed probably give us the context that we were looking for as well. Let's say we can find that middle ground, but that middle ground goes in the direction of really just giving the American public all access to all data from all time of the federal government. I don't know if we necessarily have the discipline, the ability to receive all of that information and not completely lose our minds. And I think a good example of that is the BLM rioting from 2020, as well as January 6th. The BLM riots were set off by a single man who was killed by the police, who was a criminal, who was a drug addict, and who was in the process of using a counterfeit bill. And because of this man's death, the country totally exploded into a whole bunch of riots. And then on the conservative side of things, you know, when it comes to January 6th, this was the type of thing where there was no evidence whatsoever that Trump lost the election, and a lot of his supporters showed up to the Capitol and violently broke in to that building. I think that you can blame both sides for some of the craziness over the last couple of years, and as a result, again, it really begs the question, would replacing the FBI with something like AI and giving access to millions of Americans, you know, to that type of data, is that a good idea? I don't know if it is. I don't know if we have the discipline or the integrity or the wisdom necessary in order to receive that type of information and to move forward in a way that was responsible. I think discipline is something that a lot of us struggle with in our everyday lives, which is the reason why, you know, we don't have the relationships we want, we don't have the jobs that we want, we don't make the money we want, we're not in the physical shape that we want. And, you know, if discipline is something that you struggle with, I highly recommend checking out the free training that I have in the link in the video description that will tell you exactly why you've never been able to develop discipline and exactly what to do about it. But I think the most important thing here, and and to me, this is the foundation of the argument, is what if we did have a citizenry who could process that type of information without panicking, without freaking out, and properly move forward to make the changes in our government that we wanted to make as a result of the information that we came across? Wouldn't that be something? Wouldn't that be cool to not only be able to trust, yourself or your family or your small community, but to be able to trust a state that doesn't align with your politics on the other side of your country, to be able to process that and think to yourself, okay, we're going to be fine, they're going to be fine, we're Americans, we know how to keep cool heads when shit gets crazy. Imagine living in a country like that. And I think, when it comes down to it, the number one way that we can ensure that we live in a country like that is if we ourselves bring our best selves into society to actually act with integrity, to tell the truth, to keep cool heads when shit gets crazy, and to move forward in our lives with wisdom. If we can do that, it encourages everyone around us to do the same, and then from there, it encourages everyone around them to do the exact same as well. That's how we change societies. That is how we move forward into this next century to create a country that isn't just still here, but is better than it is now. But in order to do that, you not only have to have discipline over your own psyche, you have to understand where your political adversaries are coming from and to be able to empathize with where they are as people so that you can communicate with them effectively, so that you can bring them to your side of the aisle politically, so that we can all move together as a unified country. If you want to understand your political adversary's psychology, then check out this video or this video right here.